welcome back to the Flow Performance Podcast. My name is Ricky Dan, founder of Flow Nutrition and your host. On today's episode, I had the pleasure of chatting with strength and rehab coach Nick Carbone. Nick is a strength and conditioning coach and exercise physiologist, leading athletic development and rehab of semi-elite and elite level athletes, operating most recently as the head of performance at the Redcliffe Dolphins Rugby Club. Nick also works privately with athletes and runners, taking care of their physical prep and injury rehab. As a fellow ultra runner, Nick is incredibly passionate about endurance running and achieving high performance. Nick recently co-founded the Runner's Blueprint, which offers training plans to help runners fuel properly, build resilience, and maximize their performance. Now, I've actually checked this out myself, and based off the team that have brought this together, I would strongly recommend any runners out there, regardless of ability level, to check it out. Nick has teamed up with two very highly respected sports dietitians, Aidan and Sammy from Ideal Nutrition, so there is no doubt the training and nutrition plans offered are going to be of the highest standard. I've never met the team at Ideal Nutrition, but I absolutely love their work. And to be honest, their evidence-based and pragmatic approach to sports nutrition has actually inspired much of what you see here at Flow Nutrition. Nick has been a good mate of mine for quite a few years now after connecting back in 2018 when I was teaching at UQ and Nick was completing his degree in exercise science. It's been amazing to see him absolutely crush it over the years in his career, and I'm stoked that he was willing to jump on the potty and share some of his wisdom. In today's chat, Nick answers the question, what's the go with concurrent training? We dive into what concurrent training actually is, the benefits from incorporating both resistance and endurance training, how to structure concurrent training, how to track volume, and different tapering strategies that we can use leading into running events. If you're enjoying the podcast episodes and want to support the brand, make sure you jump on the website and grab some of our new Flow nutritional bars. Our Flow Energy Bar is the easiest and most effective way to fuel before and during exercise, while our recovery bars nail the basics for post-exercise recovery. And just for listening to this podcast, you can get 10% off your total order with the code FLOWPOD at checkout. Now, Nick drops a whole lot of wisdom in this chat, so let's dive straight into it. Here is Concurrent Training with Nick Carbone.
3, 2, 1,
Alrighty, welcome back to the Flow Performance Podcast. My name is Ricky Dan, founder of Flow Nutrition. We have another episode of What's the Go? And today I am currently chilling in a sauna out at TH7 Body Labs with the legend himself, Nick Carbone. Mate, how are you doing?
Going well, mate. Getting a little bit hot in here, but we're getting through.
It is bloody warm in here. So we're going to dive straight into today's training-related question, which is what's the go with concurrent training? Now, this is something that I'm personally very interested in and something that I do quite a lot of myself. And I feel like in the last 5 to 10 years, it is just becoming so much more prevalent. I feel like 5 years ago, you were either a runner who never went to the gym or you were a gym-focused person who never ran. But now we're sort of seeing, the rise in run clubs popping up everywhere. And so many more people particularly are getting into running now. And we know that obviously the definition of concurrent training is incorporating both resistance training with endurance training. So I'm really interested to get your thoughts here because you've got a cool blend of an S&C background and who is now someone who is running ultra marathons. So my first question is, how did you start incorporating the running into your training as someone who has come from predominantly sort of a gym-based background?
Yeah, so I guess the boys and I decided to hit a marathon one day. We were like, yep, you know what, that'll be sweet. And half of us broke in the process of training for it. We were doing no strength training. We just said, yep, screw the gym. We're going to run. We'll start with 20Ks and we'll see how that goes. Mm-hmm. We built up. A few of us got there to the marathon and actually finished, which was good. Yeah. But I guess more recently at the start of this year, so February 2023, I saw an ad for the Guzzler Ultra Marathon. So it was 105Ks. I was probably doing about 20Ks a week of running at the time, and I was obviously strength training as well and trying to get stronger. Mm-hmm. And I thought, you know what, why don't I just sign up right now? Because I knew that if I didn't do it on the spot there, then I would just save it and I wouldn't go back to it. So I signed up on the spot, and I think that's the most important thing, is just like committing to it, committing to the event. And then from there, obviously I had to stay strong and had to, build my body up for that ultra marathon. So for me, it was just, I kind of saw the event, I decided to commit to it, and then got into it.
So can we just dive into that moment when you started getting into it? Because I feel like there's a lot of people there that, let's say they're doing a lot of strength training and they maybe are comfortable doing 5 or 10 Ks, but they're seeing all these people doing 50 Ks, they're doing marathons, they're doing 100 Ks, they're doing all these ultra marathons. What did your training look like when you started that transition, and how did you sort of progress? Did you run your first 5 and then 10K and then half? And what did that sort of process look like?
Yeah, 100%. So I was probably sitting around 20 Ks a week when I started that prep. So I was already doing a decent amount of volume each week, and maybe at the longest I was doing 10 Ks. So I'm sure you've heard the 10% rule where, you don't want to increase by more than 10% each week, otherwise your body will break. But what you have to do, I guess, is work out your recoverable volume. So how much volume you can do, or how many Ks you can do and recover from. So I definitely didn't increase by 10% each week. It was probably 15, 20, 30% at times. But how I built it up was, I looked at the total volume. I went from 20, I built to, that 27 mark, 35. It doesn't need to be exact, but I built up for 4 or 5 weeks and then had a deload week and dropped back down. Okay, so it probably looked like 20, 30, 35, 40, 45, and then back down almost to the start where I was at 20 Ks. And then I repeated that 3 or 4 times through the process. And again, it's working out where you're at. I got back from Europe recently. I had hardly run over there and was probably sitting around 10 Ks a week. Now, if I was to do the 10% rule from 10 Ks a week, I'd go to 11 Ks. I'd go to 11.1 or 12.1 Ks. Not possible, right? So I worked out that, I had a bit of volume backed up. I built up to 50 Ks immediately from 10 Ks. And my body was fine. So I got to that mileage. I saw how my body was. Yep, sweet, no issues. Shins feel good, knees feel good. And that was where I was at. So you don't need to start at 5 and do 6, then 7, then 8, then 9. You can build up more aggressively, but you have to check in with your body the week after or the day after your long run and go, how do I feel? And if it's sweet, then you keep building.
Mate, what you've just described there is the biggest thing that I've learned in my running sort of journey, if you want to call it that, is my ability to listen to my body and understand it now. Like, having done these ultras, I think the biggest thing for me is knowing what the difference between pain and discomfort is. That's a massive part of it. You read books like Goggins and you hear all these crazy stories about people pushing through pain. I don't think that's the right thing to do. I think it's important to push through discomfort. And that's been the most profound thing in my journey, is just knowing the difference, listening to your body, having a general plan of okay, maybe I want to run 40 Ks in this whole week. If I wake up on Monday or Tuesday after a strength session and my body feels shit, maybe listen to that and ease off. If you're feeling fresh on a day, you've got a 5 or 10K schedule, push it a little bit further. And even though I have a background in S&C and I should be pretty focused on volumes and sessions and being consistent with that, I just listen to my body every session. And I don't know, it's against all of our training that we've had with tracking volume and load, but that's worked for me. And have you experienced something similar?
100%. So I think if you have the foundation of strength too, so if you're strong, if you build up your calves, you build your shins up, you build your tibialis, you build all those areas, those smaller muscles, I think you can manage to build up your mileage faster without risking injury. But it's all about knowing your body. As a very crude example, on the weekend I had a 23K run. Now, my shins have been feeling not sore, but just, feeling some pressure through them recently. I started the run, and as I got into it and they warmed up, the pain went down, it almost disappeared, and by the end of the run, they were still feeling good. So that, for me, was all right, there's some pressure there, but it's not painful, maybe a 2 out of 10 discomfort, but they got better as I went through, and the next day, they felt pretty sweet. So that's your indicator there. How do they feel the next day is the most important thing, and then do they get better or worse throughout? If they're getting worse and it's getting sharper or more nervy almost as you go through, then that's where you need to go, hey, you know what? I'll give it a few days, okay, at least 36 hours minimum for that tendon, that cartilage to repair, and then go again, have a crack. that'd be my recommendation there.
Mate, that message is so bloody important, to listen to your body. And, you know, we are chilling in a sauna right now. So even prioritizing recovery over the training, like that is my little motto, is like recover harder than you train, because that's just it's going to keep you out there for longer, essentially. Little personal question that I'm sure I'm not the only one that struggles with this, but the thing that I struggle with most is having such large running volume and still getting in quality lower body strength training. I do probably 2 solid lower body days a week where I can lift some sort of decent weight. But do you have any tips for people that just have that feeling of heavy legs constantly because you're just racking up the volume? Is there any way that we can maybe schedule them better, or any thoughts with that?
100%. So if you consider, like, you know, a run being lower body stress, and you consider lower body training being lower body stress, if you're doing your lower body stuff on Monday and then running hard on Tuesday and then lowers on Wednesday and then running on Thursday, that's 4 days in a row of stress. Now, you're way better off, in my experience at least, and from what I've done and from what I've coached my athletes to do, is having that Monday after a big weekend of running to recover. So maybe do some uppers, get a pump on, do some bicep curls. And then on Tuesday, double them up. So do your run first, okay? Do your run first. And try and front load your mileage a little bit in that week. So I would tend to go a harder run on the Tuesday and then go a solid lower body session afterwards in the gym. So I'm hitting the stress in one day, and then I have the rest of that day to recover. I have all of Wednesday to recover, and I'm back there 48 hours later on the Thursday morning. I'll go again, usually with my lighter run for the week, and then go again on lower body. You want to hit your volume hard and almost make yourself a little bit sore on the Tuesday. Soreness is not a bad thing. Don't be afraid of it. And then on the Thursday, go a little bit easier and maybe go more for your resilience. So your calf work, your tibialis work, your posterior chain hammy glute work, before resting up on Friday and getting a lot of mileage in over the weekend. That's how I've approached it, and that seemed to work really well. Then come Monday, you just cooked again, you reset.
But that's the joys of concurrent training. You love that feeling. So the last question I'd like to ask. So as I sort of mentioned, a lot of people it's becoming quite common to do your first half marathon, first ultra in your case. So how does training look like in the weeks or months leading up to that? If you're doing, once again, a lot of volume with running, and then also whether it's 2 or 3 strength sessions a week, should you start getting rid of the strength sessions? Do you do less volume? Like, do you do more running? Like, how do those sort of weeks lead in with that concurrent training?
Yeah, so I guess early on, you want to keep the volume as high as you can. You don't want to sacrifice your strength work at all. So while the volume's quite low, so maybe you're 12 weeks out, you know, you've got a race in December, and say it's September right now, you want to keep the volume in the gym high. So you want to challenge yourself, and it's okay if you're sore. Again, it's fine to be a little bit sore going to those runs. As you head deeper into your prep, so maybe you're 8 weeks out now, you want to keep the double session. I highly recommend getting 2 sessions in of lower body each week, but again, one of them being a really high intensity session or high load, and one being more of a moderate load and more resilience or injury prevention focused. You want to keep those in there, but lower the volume slightly. So maybe instead of going 4x6 on a trap bar deadlift, you get a couple of warm-up sets in, and you do 2 or 3 solid sets of 6 reps, rather than getting 24 total reps. And then as you get closer in, again, towards the end of my Guzzler prep, so for the 105k ultra, I was doing around about 105k's a week for about 5 weeks back to back, apart from a little deload. So in that phase there's days there where you're just like, I'm not going to gym today. Still plan it out, still aim to do it. But in those phases there, heading into competition, if you know that you're starting to blow up or you're starting to get way too heavy and it's dragging over between sessions, so say normally you run and gym on a Thursday, you recover Friday and you run Saturday. If you get to a Saturday and you're like, wow, my recovery is just not where it was early on, that's where you might consider either cutting that Thursday session or really backing off and just doing mobility and trying to still get in there and move the legs. Maybe it's a bike session, maybe it's mobility, maybe it's even just like your accessory work. But that'd be my recommendation as you head closer towards the race. Because again, you build your base and you get your adaptation, so your strength, your hypertrophy, your injury resilience. I think in that first 8 weeks out of 12 weeks, and the last 4 weeks is about feeling good and focusing on your your event.
Yeah. Mate, that is unbelievably valuable. Thank you so much for that. We are out of time. We could chat about that for freaking ages. But yeah, mate, thank you so much again for your time and your knowledge. If anyone has any further questions, don't hesitate to send us a message at Flow Nutrition. Hit Nick up on Instagram. But yeah, thanks for tuning in, guys, and we will catch you again next week to answer more of your questions. Thanks, mate.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Flow Performance Podcast. I hope you enjoyed the chat and found loads of value that you can use to fuel your flow state. If you did enjoy the content and want to support the brand, make sure you jump on the website and grab some Flow nutritional bars. They are the most effective and convenient way to fuel your flow state. And as a valued podcast listener, you can get 10% off your total order with the code FLOWPOD at checkout. So thanks again for tuning in. We will catch you again next week.